Hi, Engin. Welcome to the Future Proof Operations podcast.
Hi, Benjamin. Very pleased to be here.
Great to have you. Could you give me a 60 seconds overview of who you are and what you are doing?
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much again for the invitation. I myself am working for Archer Digital in our German office as a partner. I'm part of the global operations management team, and within the operations management team, we are of course addressing the upcoming questions of digital through the next decade as one of the key enablers for efficiency, for further development, but also setting up, so to say, the operations in a new and updated manner. My personal background is not a typical consultant background as I'm coming from industry. I've been working in the first years of my career in the power generation area in the energy utilities industry, have gathered there some background on project management, on asset development, asset new build, asset maintenance, and based on that, joined, so to say, consulting, and I'm using that knowledge, of course, in client discussions, but also in all the projects we are delivering around the world.
Engin, before we start with our main topic today, I would like to ask you about your opinion on Industry 4.0. Is it still a relevant topic for manufacturing companies?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I guess there are several answers to that. Um, all of us have seen throughout the last years that Industry 4.0 is actually not used as a term anymore. That was, I would say, some hype throughout the middle of the last decade and has been addressed, assessed, evaluated, and tried to be implemented throughout the broad industry landscape in all facets, and has gotten lost as a term, of course, throughout the last years. Nevertheless,
Mhm.
Industry 4.0 and all the digitalization activities which have been started are still very important and will be part of all of our lives personally, but also in the business environment for the next decades. So digitalization and digital operations will be one of the key topics with which addresses needs throughout the world, and we will see that digital topics will be part of standard business-driven area where on daily basis, but also on longer time frames, certain topics will come up, and we'll try to solve them, build them into our operations, or make them as part of our standard operations environment. And we'll not talk about Industry 4.0, so to say, but we'll of course talk about of digitalization planning, execution, and how to rethink, for example, processes, technologies, and so on.
Then let's go into it. Today, we want to talk about the digitalization of
Yeah.
operations. Many companies are dealing with digitalization and still have their problems getting traction. What are their main challenges?
The main challenges are quite broad. When we look on the background, what has been done throughout the last years, and spend the time a little bit back through I would say, last 5 to 7 years, there has been at a lot of corporations, a lot of clients at ourselves, the initial question in place, what digital actually means. And digital, of course, have been started as often as a corporate initiative, where initial opportunities, both on the benefit side, coming from the business demands, but also on the opportunity side, coming from technology opportunities, have been assessed. And certain projects have been started. Those projects have been, of course, often transferred to the business units. The business units of large corporations, smaller corporations have been driving those activities at a certain extent. Some of them failed, some of them have been successful, but we see that now we are coming, so to say, at certain technologies, but also in the maturity on how to apply new technologies at a second wave, so to say, where transparency is actually asked on what the benefits have been and what key enablers are in place to enable actually the benefits. The key challenges are, I would say, quite broad. The key one of the key challenges the business environment is often challenging is transparency on what is actually happening in
Mhm.
the market, what can be implemented with positive value add to the business operations. On the other hand, of course, knowledge. How can new technologies be applied to operations and what kind of changes are needed to be done? That doesn't only mean that you, for example, choose a certain technology and place that into your processes and try to digitalize the process, but that you need to think through, of course, organizational changes, cultural topics, process changes, and
Hmm.
so on. And on the left hand, of course, and this is most probably one of the larger parts, people. How to address people with the changing business environment due to digital. Do we have the
Hmm.
right mindset? Are we addressing new opportunities right? Or are we seeing them just as an lever to optimize, for example, certain topics? The questions and the challenges are broad and often quite business specific as well.
Hmm. Okay, let's go into details.
Yeah,
So, as the challenges you name, transparency, knowledge, and
yeah,
people. When it comes to transparency, what are we talking about? Not are we not transparent in a way that we know what technology can do or should do and what it's actually doing when it's being implemented?
yeah, yeah. I guess it's both. On the first hand, the question is you have a certain business problem and you are looking for a solution to that. And you are sitting, for example, in a business function or the head, you are the head of the business function. The first question which comes in your mind is, how could I solve that? And would a digital application, a digital solution be part of that solution? If the answer is, for
Mhm.
example, yes, then the next question follows, what kind of solutions are out there? And what is the maturity of the solutions? Is there, for example, a solution which has the maturity of a product I can, for example, buy and apply to my processes, or are they, so to say, technology building blocks I need to get into an end-to-end solution or an end-to-end view and need to further invest in development to get that actually ready to run. Both the perspective on what is available and what the maturity of those technologies, if it's not a basic application, is still a quite large question. On the other hand, the transparency on where to apply that actually with a benefit and how to calculate the benefit and how to tackle the challenges of the implementation is still maybe part of transparency where you do not have a clear picture on how to take that, for example, and take it into your operations and build it seamlessly to whatever you have also in place.
So transparency goes hand in hand with the second challenge you named, the knowledge,
Yeah,
right? So you need to have the knowledge. You need to have a transparent overview that you know how to apply and what to apply.
exactly, exactly.
And again, I assume it's one of your tasks as an expert and as a consultant to bring in transparency and knowledge to your
Yeah.
customers. But what can customers do beside that, or probably before they reach out to you? How can you counteract that challenges as a customer?
I mean, there are several ways to address those challenges, right? You can set up a way of business operations where you enable the implementation of digital opportunities into your organization and into your technology landscape. That starts, of course, with an organizational setup where you explicitly invest time in searching for opportunities, market-wise, but also business-wise. And on the other hand, you need, of course, to have an technology and digital oriented culture in place. This is easier
Mhm.
said than done. I'm totally aware of that. But we are often looking, for example, at assets, heavy operations, sometimes also in service operations, where the digital opportunities which are in the market are still addressed as large asset projects, where investment life cycles are calculated in 5 to 6 years, where projects are set up for 3 to 4 years, and people start and execute things, and a couple of years later, even don't know what the targets have been. And with that approach, it's quite hard to generate the value you are expecting from new topics because the time is running quite fast. The technology maturity and development is running quite fast. and you need to be able to adapt to those structures. And this is not, of
Hmm.
course, something you can prepare as an organization, but you need to be aware of that, and you need to be also ready to have such a mindset in place. And this is, of course, sometimes a question which our clients come forward to ADL and ask, even before getting new technologies or innovative solutions in place, how can be how can that process actually be managed?
Hmm. You are talking about a tech-oriented, digital-oriented
Yeah,
culture. When it comes to the people within the organization, how can you bring that culture in? What is the tool, the measure to enable the people within an organization to be focused on technology, to be focused on digital topics in general?
yeah. I guess the first answer which comes to my mind is thinking project execution in a new way.
Hmm.
Often you would say think agile, execute in sprints, for example, but that's not applicable everywhere. I guess the most
Okay.
important part an organization needs to be aware is that some sort of a failure culture needs to be in place. Why is that? If you're addressing new technology areas, new application areas, then not every project you are going to conduct will be a success. There will be also failures. And majority of the corporations, when we look on into the market and into our environment, are used to have a setup where people get a task, and the task can be a land task or a project, and they are
Yeah.
measured on their success. And the success is, of course, and in majority, measured in positive values. Is the project has the project been delivered in budget, in time? Has it delivered the value we defined? Even if when defining the value has been quite hard, and what was the outcome? That an outcome can be that you generated knowledge for the organization and also learned that something didn't went well because it didn't deliver the results, and that this is still a good result is a huge culture shift. And I see a lot of organizations where exactly this mindset to explore new things with an open-minded approach, with an open-minded and open methodological way is just not in place. And people are sometimes even scared to address new topics because they know if I'm going to an exploration phase, there is a certain risk that I probably could generate a failure. And this is not well accepted by the organization because if I have a project where I've been working for a couple of months and generated a failure in terms of we are not implementing something or we are not executing something, then this is a stamp I'm going to get. And this is something you
Hmm.
don't want to have. And then think also in a completely different way. But this is not
Yeah.
innovation per se. This is project as we have executed projects for the last 20 to 30 years in our business environment.
I find that super interesting because when I think of a failure culture and you're talking about that transformation or that mindset
Yeah,
change, I think of startups, of tech startups, which are pushing that kind of failure culture a lot. But how do you bring it into an organization with 1,000 employees, for example? What are the tools you need to get that kind of mindset shift
yeah,
done?
yeah. An interesting question, and I would even not think of 1,000 employees. The majority of our clients have 5, 10, 15, 20,000 employees and are
Hmm.
larger. And the question is, how do you bring such tanker to a culture shift? The first answer which comes into mind is, of course, to say it set internal innovation teams which are operating in a closed environment. That means not directly into the known business operations, not directly into the existing organizational units, but as an internal innovation incumbent, so to say. But still, you're operating with the same people, still, you're operating with the same processes, methodologies, and the governance, and you need to have some flexibility around that. So, creating an environment where employees can spend a certain amount of their time or even can be outsourced to that organizational unit, for example, to spend some time there and to work in a manner and in a style which has not been in place until now in a small scale can help. On the other hand, project execution and project delivery can be thought through in a new manner in selected business units and business areas. The most important part is that you need to have some sort of management backing and management alignment, that you are investing, that you're in an investment mode in the organization,
Mhm.
even if you're building, so to say, an internal incubator for new ideas or innovation, or if you're changing the project delivery and the expected results and the measurement of the expected results, you need to be aware of that. You need to communicate that properly. You need to set expectations right, and you need to have management backup for that. The most important part, I guess, is whatever way you choose is active expectation management and active communication towards that unit, towards that project, that they are able to operate in a different way and that they are also, so to say, in an closed environment where results are measured in a new and updated manner. And based on that,
Mhm.
you can generate with either both options, and there are several furthers, so to say speedboats, where you can generate at the rest of the organization mindset where people see that something is happening and see that either innovations generated or new solutions are taken into place, and they want to be part of that. So you are creating an innovation push in the organization by generating internal demand. And that has been working quite well at several clients. But of course, you need to adapt those concepts to the setup of the organization, to the needs of the organization, to the demand of the organization, to have the right topic into place that could actually work.
When you talk about that speedboat, do I understand it right that when we are within a big transformation project, a big digitalization project, you try to focus on one specific use case, for example, on one specific team, go to implementation fast, go to the results fast, and this is the speedboat which you can then use to get commitment from other teams and in the end from the whole
Yeah,
company?
it's usually not just yeah. It's just usually not just one project, but usually it's a portfolio of topics which which you need to manage actively. But it goes to the direction. Yeah, you need to enable the delivery of innovation into your business operations with an, as mentioned, with a new understanding on how value is actually measured and how value is generated. And I would go not just with a single project because you know the that the risk that the project doesn't run well and as can be
Mhm.
taken as an not well executed innovation topic is quite high because it's in the measure of the topic. But if you manage a portfolio of innovation and technology or oriented projects, I would go for you will usually go for 5 to 10 topics which are running in parallel with very scoped time frames with very scoped areas of delivery and assess, for example, after a quarter of time, what has been working well, what has not been working well, and communicate that activity to them, activity to the audience. And the audience can be either a business unit, for example, an organizational unit, or the full corporation, and show that you keep on generating speed and that you keep on generating value. That would help.
Engin, you said that success factors are having good a great communication,
Yeah.
let's say it like that, having the management on board and bringing everyone into the topic, having everyone um, on the boat, so to say. When I talk with manufacturing companies, what I see at some point is that you have, for example, workshops, trainings for the business people, the people who are sitting in the
Mhm.
office. They are used to it. They know how a workshop is being done. And I see a gap between the office people, so to say, and between the people in the field,
Yeah.
in the factory, in the shop floor, the frontline workforce. Do you see that as well? And do you have measures against it that you, when we talk about that digitalization project, for example, have different measures to get the frontline workforce on board than getting the office people on board.
Yeah, of course. The question is, at what extent are you addressing either so to say, white collar, blue collar employees? Are you, for example, coming from a corporate perspective or a business unit perspective where you would like to transform something on the shop floor?
Mhm.
And what is actually your aim and the scope of delivery you are actually addressing? Is your aim to drastically change the operations, the processes where people are actively working on? Or is it, for example, just a sole application or application-based solutions you would like to implement? Those are different questions, but I guess that you're especially addressing the drastic changes on the shop floor where people are actually affected from the implementation of new technologies because processes, governance, and the organization also need to adapt. Then, in my opinion, the key solution is to have those people at least on the shop floor management level of also on board. And it goes even
Mhm.
further. We had a larger topic, a large digital transformation topic, where we had, for example, the workers' council also from day one in a steering committee, but also as an actively sounding board and input giving element to have everyone who's affected on board and not to think out solutions through towards the implementation, start with the implementation and see that there is some sort of pressure in place because people don't want to do stuff because they do not understand it and that you didn't gather their inputs as well. But thinking it through as also thinking digital projects through as also a people project where we get and involve all those people who could be affected as well, not just to have them on board, but also to use their valuable input as well. And then often things work out. When I think, for example, towards the example I brought where we had the workers' council or the digital transformation project was well on board, we had the project at a larger scale planned and it went through the decision of the board of the company I'm thinking of to scaling to further sites coming from one side, and we had some
Mhm.
political discussions. If things are feasible, yes or no, if the solutions which has been designed for a single site are applicable at the other sites because the other sites have different modes of operation and different clients and so on and were at a risky degree, so to say, of progress. And at that risky degree, the Workers' Council came in place and actively was fighting for further scaling of these topics because they said we have been on board, we are believing to the outcomes, especially when it comes to helping people to execute their daily tasks. There have been several interesting facets of that, and we want to have those topics in place because they are actually not helping people, but they are enabling them, for example, also stay longer on the job. And this is a
Yeah.
key decision criteria as well. And jointly with the help of the Workers' Council, we were able to roll out those digital transformation program to almost a major part of the sites of the client.
So, did you need to moderate that talks between you, the customer, and the workers'
Yeah, of
council?
course, as a consultant, you have often not just a consultant, but also a moderating role where you need sometimes to moderate opinions, sometimes where you need to help to adapt also different types of understanding when looking to the same question, for example, or often also help to translate between entities, translate between suppliers and the organization. There are several facets of moderation, but yes, of course, that's one of the key tasks.
I would like to jump into another topic
Sure.
which is connected to our main topic, technologies. I know that technologies can be a big accelerator and driver of digitalization in general. And when we stick with your example project, I know that you, for example, talk about autonomous plant operations, which
Hmm.
are supported by AI, and you are talking about the digital
Yeah.
twin. Can you bring more light into their
Yeah,
topics?
yeah. I mean, you brought two very nice examples of topics which are at an early grade of maturity. And we have several clients, several projects where, for example, did the initial steps to generating an end-to-end digital twin, but we have other clients that are still struggling to build the database, to build
Mhm.
and feed the digital twin, for example. And the same is, of course, with autonomous machinery, with AI-based machinery, because the question is, what do I actually want to generate and what do I actually want to have in place? Do I, for example, want to automate the majority of the decisions I'm taking today as a process and manual-based way? In the future, actively driven by the processes or by the machinery, where I, as an, for example, factory manager, am just oversighting the process, but I'm not actively part of the decision making anymore. And the question is at what extent I want to use technology and in which industry I am actually. Asset-heavy industries tend to have a more harder time because the digital replication of the assets in a data entity and in the database world is still a challenge. And you need to ask yourself, do I need to break down, for example, my assets to functional elements? And what kind of data do I possess today? And am I even able to integrate the data to a full data entity, which I can use for further analytics? Or do I need to start with certain elements of that? When I look for service industries, that's usually more easier because when you look at services, today the majority of services are already in some sort of ERP and other
Mhm.
application-based system, but still there you have interface questions and integration questions. So it's not that easy at almost all industries, but you have different starting points. And the key task is, in my opinion, to generate the right targets. What do I expect, for example, on 3 months of time? What do I expect in months of time? But what is my vision and my target picture for the next 5 to 8 years I want to achieve? Because that
Mhm.
helps to get things I want to achieve and my roadmap of topics also better in place. Again, for communication, but again, also to set the right execution pace into place.
And when we talk about that vision, and we connect it to the autonomous plant operations which you are bringing
Mhm.
in, how do you see the role of the frontline workforce in 5 to 10 years? Autonomous for me sounds some kind like workers are not needed anymore, or how do you see that?
No, I guess that the roles are of the workers will be changing, but we will need workforce at an extent which we have it today, even more into place. Not
Mhm.
in an execution perspective, more in an oversighting, knowledge-driven way, where autonomous operations, and we see that today already in different industries where autonomous in operations is partially in place, needs to oversight it, needs to be developed further, but also needs to, for example, be maintained. So we will for sure need workers, and this is a question I'm getting often, very often, at what extent we actually deliver digitalization projects, if digital is a lever for cost savings or is it an enabler for further opportunities. And in my perspective, digital can, of course, be a lever for cost savings, but I
Mhm.
never executed a digital program and digitalization project with the focus of reducing FTEs. In the majority, we were enabling the existing workforce to develop themselves further. And we have seen also that when we want to roll out digital solutions, that we need more workforce support to support the
Mhm.
new way of operation. So it's a quite broad and interesting topic to elaborate, actually.
This is very interesting. So you say you within your digitalization project, you come to a point where you actually need more workforce to
Yeah.
get the work done.
Exactly. Giving you an example, um, we are trying to enable the workforce. In an automation project, you can try to automate business processes on the IT application part, but also on the process part. The key focus which we are having through the recent years is to get people away from repetitive tasks. You know that very well, and to drive them to more value-driven activities. And the defining value-driven activities is quite broad. What does the business operations need at a certain degree? Where do I want to develop myself? What is my long-term strategy? Where do I want to invest actually and on knowledge and strategy basis and get away from autonomous processes is usually one of the key targets. And if you enable actually the business operations to be able to invest to value-driven activities, then you're opening up new opportunities and see, oh, to address those new opportunities, I actually need either more technology or more people. And this is often an eye-opener.
Engin, it has been super interesting to talk with you.
Sure,
We are coming to the last
sure.
question. Let's go into a role of a CIO of a manufacturing company. It has round about 1,000 employees, and this manufacturing company is an old-fashioned one.
Yeah,
So when it comes to the digitalization level, they have an ERP in place, but everything else is paper-based, manual processes, and very much focus on
yeah,
execution. And you are the CIO of that company. You get in charge right
yeah.
now. Which kind of topic do you put on the agenda today to be future proof?
That's a quite interesting question, and I would answer that twofold. The reality, I would say it's on the first hand, most probably the reality-driven perspective, and on the other hand, the ambition-driven perspective. The reality-driven perspective will be one as a CIO, where I most certainly will have a large degree of legacy topics I need to solve, from making data available, applications, infrastructure on-premise, on the cloud, business on IT architecture, and so on. So I will need to address that. On the other hand, I will need, and that's most certainly the first bucket of topics I need to address. On the other hand, coming again from an IT perspective, I will need to address topics to stepwise change my operations to, for example, build new applications, to bring in digital technology to the operations wherever a function has a certain degree of need. And I guess at the sketched company, there will be a large degree, and this is then a prioritization question. But the second bucket will address after having addressed the legacy questions or in parallel, how can I stepwise transform my functions? And the third bucket of topics will be how can I transform my operations in a large manner? So what are the larger game changer topics? And would select there wisely one or two larger topics and bring that into my portfolio. At the end of the day, I guess for that company, the portfolio of topics you can address is quite large, but having some sort of methodology where you balance all topics is quite important. And those topics are legacy management, stepwise changing of the business operations, and what can I do in a large transformative manner. This is the first part. In an ambition part, I would think my business environment and the process environment from a native digital perspective. So how I would build my operations in a fully digitalized manner and
Mhm.
so to say think back on what can be done to reach that target scenario. That's most certainly the more interesting part, but the reality will show that the first reality-driven approach will help more.
Engin, thanks for being on the podcast. Looking forward to see you in one of the next episodes.
Very welcome, Benjamin. Thank you very much for the invitation. Bye bye.
Bye.